This is AUGforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Repay. Repay offers omni-channel integrated payment solutions for Acumatica users. Whether you are making B2B payments or collecting them, Repay is your full-service payments provider. Power up your payments to empower your business and accelerate the AP and AR payment flow through one seamless integration. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Velixo. Velixo is an award-winning provider of Excel-based reporting solutions for Acumatica. With Velixo, you can build financial, project, and other business reports in Excel with live Acumatica data in just a few minutes and get the answers you need. If you know Excel, you can do it. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. Guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Wednesday, June 8th, 2022, and this is episode number 88, Todd Kuhns, Acumatica FastTrack Deployment. So Todd, thanks for coming on. You've been on before, so we can skip your brief origin story, but we ended our last episode saying that we'd like to do another one, so thanks for making the time for part two to talk about the FastTrack today.
Well, thanks, Tim. Thanks for inviting me back. Looking forward to sharing more information about this. FastTrack, sort of what's the purpose and sort of where it came out of, I think is key. So, and as most people know that are probably listening to this, Acumatica is structured to rely on our partner channel for selling and implementing Acumatica, right? And as we all know, implementing ERP systems can become very complex and costly through that process. What we've seen through time, because of Acumatica's flexibility, right, which is one of the strong points, and just be able to customize and fit into a lot of verticals and niche markets, even though Acumatica does have our focus being manufacturing, commerce, and construction, to name a few. It can get very complex in a lot of areas, and implementation on an average takes somewhere right around 10 months and can have a cost between $60,000 and $75,000, right, to implement. Now, obviously there's a lot that goes into that, the number of modules, and are there some customizations, all those different things. But if you think about it that way, those are probably some good averages throughout the process, right? And what we've been seeing through the years, the ecosystem is becoming resource constrained, right? We see a lot of mature consultants that are out there, but we're not seeing a lot of youth that's coming into this particular industry. And we're sort of seeing more people retiring, and it's harder to find resources. So, what's one of the things that we can do to increase that time to value, right? And how do we change our mindset around implementations? So when, Tim, as you, when we started this, right, implementations, basically everything was this big bang theory, right? We sort of designed everything out, which would take us, 2-3 months a lot of times to get a document, to do all the discovery. You go back and forth and so forth. And then you get into this big implementation, and it's just everything. And it was just like, we're not going to do any rollouts until it's all designed, it's all been tested, and we can get everybody on it at one point in time.
Right.
And there's still some of that does need to occur. But FastTrack really pushes us to look at more of a phased approach, right? How do we get our customers utilizing Acumatica sooner so that they do see that time to value, and which ends up becoming a faster time to productivity. When we first starting to come up with this thought process was several years ago, and I took this idea to an executive partner meeting. It was actually in Houston, and sort of said, hey, what do you all think about this? What if we came up with sort of a approach where we had Acumatica somewhat pre-configured that would greatly reduce our implementation time, and at least give us a good foundation to start from that we can build from, right? That's one of the other things of Acumatica being so flexible, and I like about this phased and this fast track approach, is that it's a great starting point that then you can build off of and add to as you move forward, right? I'm diverting here a little bit, but you get into this, this methodology that, that we've spent a lot of time here in Acumatica. Just there's this thing called sustain phase, right? Again, back into that big bang theory, it was almost for that mindset. We're getting almost everything done, that then it just became more into this, I want to say maintenance, or just, hey, we're just doing upgrades going forward. There wasn't this reevaluation of everything that you're doing, and let's continuously improve our business processes, continuously find ways to take advantage of all the feature sets inside the ERP system. So with FastTrack, that really encourages that mindset for partners and customers to almost live in that sustain phase of, great, we've got this done, we have this win, this is great, we've learned more, we know more about the system. Then the next phase, which tends to, they all tend to be a little considerably shorter, then gets you to where you need to considerably faster. And a lot of times it ends up being at a lower cost.
Yeah, and I like everything you're saying there. I totally agree with it. I feel like the big bang leads to a lot of failures, right? Because there's no way you can live up to the expectations that everyone has. And the sooner you get people in, the sooner they get real on what they're really getting, and they're in a better position for the next phase because they're actually using Acumatica in some type of capacity. I've seen that over and over again. It always changes your view on things when you're ready for the next step, if you at least got into the system in some capacities. I'm totally on board with that.
I mean, we can even take it back to, when as kids, I don't mean that we're all youth, but just even we're young, a lot of times just in implementing an ERP system, and we might have implemented other ERP systems, but just implementing Acumatica, no matter which ERP system, but we'll talk about Acumatica, right? Is that we're all youths, or not as knowledgeable, and we don't expect a young person to be able, who doesn't even know how to walk, to go from crawling to sprinting, right? There's stages to go through, and you learn and you become stronger and better, and you can adapt a lot quicker, right? Because we've seen kids crawl and then all of a sudden they start walking, but they all start running very quickly after they start walking, right? So you sort of self-learn, and things move along a lot quicker. It's the same thing with all of us, right? Once we learned math or something of that sort, all of a sudden some of these other pieces we can adapt to much quicker. I mean, as a partner, right, when we think about our partners, and we've been partners, right? We've been business consultants, and we've come from, different ERP backgrounds, right? The first couple implementations that you go through as you're learning a new system, it takes you a little bit of time, right? But once you start implementing some of them, all of a sudden all the pieces start to fall together. So if we sort of take that mindset with our customers, we already know then the other phases are going to go better, right? Because now the customer can interact more with us. We're not speaking like a foreign language in some aspects, and they can contribute more and they go smoother. And they already sort of have those expectations of what's going to happen. And those, especially in a SaaS model, that allows the customer to really see that value much sooner, because we're implementing in 60 to 90 days versus 365 to 700 plus days, right? Which is always a win-win. And probably even not just even in that aspect, but the cost, right? Even though maybe the long-term cost may be about the same, but the short-term cost and the anxiety that the customer has, because realistically, the customer has the most to lose, right? Because they're the one that's paying for the software, they're the ones that are paying for the services and all those different things. So they have a huge investment. And when you think about those huge investments and not being able to really see much of a benefit, right? You have to be a really good consultant to keep, especially in a 12 to an 18-month implementation, if they even go that long, to keep the customer excited and see the benefits that are coming, even though they're not really utilizing the system. So a consultant,
that's a good point.
They're putting a lot of time and effort, not even implementing, but just constantly keeping the customer hyped up about what's to come in another 10 months, or 6 months, or, and we all see, and we see it more and more, because just generationally wise, long gone are the days that, people are patient enough to wait, 12 months anymore, right? We're also used to, because we have our smartphones, just technology. We get everything instantly today. I mean, even through this pandemic that we've gone through, right? You can now, Amazon ships food the next same day, right? You don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore. And you get all that stuff just instantaneously. So it's just a mindset that we've all gotten to. So, implementing an ERP system, people still sort of have that mindset. There have been multiple calls, even in a sales cycle, and you're talking about, okay, I'm going to set up financials and distribution, and this will take us 6 months. And like, well, I thought it would only take us 30 days. Sometimes it's even just setting that expectation, and understanding sort of what that scope is and what's inside that box.
Yeah, I like that word mindset, because, we're talking about Acumatica and ERP systems in general, but yeah, that mindset has changed. I don't know if it's generational or if it's just an evolution in work thinking. Another comparison that comes to mind is the Waterfall methodology versus the Agile or Scrum methodology. Another thing that comes to mind is the idea of a minimum viable product in software, that you're not expecting the first iteration to be perfect. And that's just a change in mindset that people have when they approach any software in general, it seems like nowadays.
Without a doubt. And I know I said generational. I'm thinking generational, all of us, is where we are as not necessarily age-wise, but I think you said it more correctly, just where we are just in our business thought process, how business has matured and has changed. And it's been changing. I mean, to be very honest about it, I mean, it started changing, 10 years ago, right? And sort of, what does this look like? That's where, the SaaS came into play. And then all of a sudden now they're paying these monthly fees, and now we've got to figure out, great, they're paying this and they're paying this and they're saying they're paying this, but yet they're not actually utilizing the system. So it forces that idea of, great, now, but I got to start showing the benefit out of the system, and having this phased approach, right? And the phased approach is sort of a mixture. I was happy to hear you say sort of Waterfall and Agile. It is sort of a mixture of both, right? And I find those to be the most successful. But this phased approach gives you that flexibility to really meet the customer's needs and demands based upon what kind of an ERP system that they're coming from. And it fits. A lot of people have this mindset that it's only for small businesses, right? And that's far from the truth. I constantly get a lot of partners and people that come to me and say, okay, well, great, this should be just people that don't have, new businesses, or they're coming from, some, like QuickBooks or something of that sort. I've actually found that sometimes coming from QuickBooks isn't necessarily a good fit for this phased approach, this fast track. But I've seen some very large systems, people coming from maybe even Oracle, and all of a sudden they want to move to a mid-market type product or something of that sort. I've seen them fit into this sort of phased approach, and just looking at the key pieces to start that foundation and then migrate as they continuously move forward.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always looked at it as a company size thing too. Interesting.
Yeah, it's really, I've enjoyed seeing the evolution of this move along, and just talking to partners. A lot of the summits, I bring this up. I have little breakout sessions every now and then. This always seems to come up, but talking to partners and customers, and part of it is actually even just I get a little bit, not as much as I used to, but working with partners and talking to customers about FastTrack and really what is its basis, and it's really just a different methodology of implementing. Even though we're sort of saying, hey, we're going to start with this foundation that's already pre-set up. But it's not limiting. It's just saying, hey, we're just going to agree to this box. Now we have a predefined box, but it's not really a limit. It's just saying we're agreeing to sort of start with this scope and go live and then move forward. And
before you hit that scope, maybe you could back up to the characteristics that you mentioned. So, you mentioned the QuickBooks one that might not be a good fit, the Oracle one that could be a good fit. I mean, what are some of those things you look for when you're deciding, is this a candidate for fast track?
Yeah. So when I talk to partners or I talk to customers, I go back to them and I say, look, what are some of the key things about why you're moving to a new ERP system, right? Some are just, hey, I'm a business startup. Okay, great, right? When we have those, and then in a business startup, I'll say, look, based upon your business, hey, we have these pre-configured systems. If you're agreeing to this base system, knowing that we can change it later, but then you're going to be up in 45 days, or you're going to be up in 90 days, depending upon what they're doing, right? And it's going to be, because it's already pre-configured, we're going to cut your cost from, let's say, $70,000 to $10,000. Is that agreeable? Just to get you started. So it's a lower cost up front, which obviously excites everybody. So there's a little bit less risk financially if something doesn't necessarily go right, but they're getting into it sooner, and then they're going to learn more. So a lot of times people with newer businesses like the idea when you present all those pieces. So like, oh yeah, great, then I can really learn it. I can, I'll really know what I've got in the next 90 days or so, or less, right? When we talk about, and when I start talking to customers that are already on a legacy system, it's what is already connected. What are things that are you changing a lot of your business processes? Do you have a lot of customization in your old system? What can we do? Or do you have a lot of disjointed systems? And when you have a lot of disjointed systems, this phased approach sort of fits a little bit better, because nothing's connected and they're doing a lot of manual things already, right? So I can say, let's just get finance, and let's do our finance and distribution fast track, right? And here's sort of the basis, which is what they sort of already have today. And then they have all these disjointed systems. Great, then we can replace that. You're already manually doing everything. We can get this up, and again, less than 90 days. And then we can start later phases, pick one off at a time and say, okay, great, let's focus on this one disconnected system, and then we can enhance that piece, or then we'll pick the next one, and then we'll pick the next one. So it gives us the ability to have these shorter wins at the same time and be able to celebrate them. And there's that sense of accomplishment. I think we've all gotten to this mindset, right? Especially in the last few years, we need that accomplishment. We need those wins to happen faster, so that we feel that we've accomplished something, so that then we can move on and we're just as excited, if not more excited, about the next one, because we saw that win. And that's just key. Part of this is, and I go back to this a little bit, part of it is just our mindset today, right? That we talked about a little bit earlier, and feeding off of how do we feel positive about what we're doing, and are we moving in the right direction, and selecting the system and going down with this. So a lot of times, if they have disjointed systems, that's a big piece for me. Or if they come in and like, hey, you know what, I'm getting into this new vertical. I don't do this today. Okay, but I want to be able to add this on. Or we don't have these features. It's all done in Excel today. And I know it's sort of a disjointed system, or we're not doing any of this today. Those are other areas that we can find that, I sort of call out real quickly and say, okay, great, let's do this first and then go down that path. And those tend to be the ones. Now, sometimes I reach a little bit and I sort of push the customer a little bit to sort of think outside that box, because it is a different mindset, and see what they can come up with, and if they can bite in and say, hey, you know what, we're okay with just doing financials, maybe, right? Let's get financials in. We'll just keep our books. We'll allow our other system to continue to do the sales and so forth, and we'll just do our journal entries at the end of the month, and then we'll roll in the next piece. We've done a few like that. So it's really learning more about the customer and what their goals and objectives are to see if it's really a fit.
I totally agree with that disconnected systems point. I've seen that before. If you've got multiple systems already involved, including Excel spreadsheets, then the switches that you need to turn off are small or smaller, right? Yep. Where it becomes difficult is when it's like the Dr. Frankenstein big giant switch, that you have to use two people to turn down. That's when it gets a lot harder, because you might have a system that you're relying on for financials and distribution and manufacturing, and it's all happening together. And to turn one piece off, then you'd have to integrate, still with the old system. That gets a lot harder to do a phased approach, right? But that for sure, slam dunk on the disconnected systems, because you have smaller switches that you can turn off.
You're right. And this is not for everybody, right? I think there's still, even still today, there's reasons for a, big bang approach, without a doubt. There have been some that I've sat on and said, yep, this is just not, I know you'd like to do it this way, but this is not going to be a successful rollout for you. So this isn't what I would recommend. So you're right. I think if they're very and I don't even want to say it's only because they're established, but if they're established and they have a lot of things that are already well integrated, where it's automated, right? Not a lot of manual stuff, it does become very difficult. And the one thing that is key about this is that the customer can't go backwards, right? When you move to another system, they can't be going backwards at that first go live. It needs to be at least sort of a basis of where they're at today, and then move forward. So you sort of really have to sort of figure out where they're at today and what does that look like, and then do we have something that's similar enough that they can at least say they've made a parallel move, right? Or parallel move to the same functionality, and then we're going to add on to later.
Yeah, so that's the better candidate. And that's where they might have wanted all the improvements on their wish list on day one, big bang. And that's where we're saying, mindset wise, let's rein that in. Let's get some wins. And I like using the word momentum for that. I feel like it's momentum in an ERP project is hard to get, easy to lose, right? Yeah. And you want to keep that momentum going. You don't want to go too fast, but you want to go fast enough that you're getting wins and people are seeing results and building confidence, right?
Yep. Very true.
So let's say we've got that. We've got the background. We've got a candidate for FastTrack. They're like, yeah, this is it. What does that look like then? Let's say they sign the contract. I think you said 90 days multiple times there. You also mentioned some kind of, I'm using the word template, some kind of pre-configured thing. Where do we go from there once we've identified a good candidate for it?
Yeah. So everybody's agreed, right? So then the next piece is that what's critical for us is that we do a kickoff, just like we would for any type of deployment, right? Just because it does follow our standard implementation methodology that we have, right? But we have that kickoff, and it's important at that point in time to reiterate what the goal was, why we are doing this phased approach, what's included in this phase one, right? Because a lot of times there's multiple phases. What's in this first phase, or what's in this first step, or what are we building in this foundation, right? To get live. So that is probably one of the first key things with they're with the customers, SMEs, with the partners, or whoever's all involved in this. The project manager is solely responsible for making sure that, hey, look, here's the scope, this is what we've all agreed to, and this is how we're moving forward. Are we still all on the same page, right? Sometimes, you have newer people in here. That's not what I heard, and going down that path, right? But it allows us to all then have that basic background. And as you probably are hearing is that the key to a phased approach in this fast track is having a strong project manager, right? Because it is sort of a box. As we all know, we always get excited about things, especially excited about Acumatica and all the features that are there. We're all like, oh yeah, let's go do this. Yeah, let's go do this, right? And we even see those in standard implementations, and they can get off track very quickly, right? And consultants, and rightfully so, are there to please and do what the customer asks, right? And try to keep things moving in a very positive momentum, right? That's the reason why you have to have a strong project manager to say, look, yes, this is great. We're going to parking lot this. This is going to be a phase 2. We're going to do this later, but we've got to stay in the box because we all agreed this is what we're going to do. And we wanted to be live in this time frame, right? So we have that kickoff meeting. And then right away, what we do is we do sort of what we call it is a workshop. And the workshop is a little bit of a discovery, analyze, sort of designing a little bit, and some training, right? And we sort of we'll go through each module, and we normally schedule, let's say, I'm just going to say we're doing a distribution one here, okay? So we'll take about an hour and a half, and we'll talk through general ledger, and we'll say, okay, great. Here's what's been pre-configured, right? Here's what's been set up. Here are some things that you can change. Here are some things that we don't want you to change, at least in this phase, but we'll be able to adjust when we get into phase 2. Here are some things that we're not going to turn on. And the idea behind that is because we really didn't do a deep discovery like you normally would in a sales cycle that takes over 6 months. These fast track type of implementations tend to shorten that sales cycle to 2 to 3 weeks, right? Because it's already pre-configured. You're sort of telling them what's defined and what's in the box. So that's why this workshop in this first week is critical. So we can.
Now the workshop, this is on the consulting side after someone has purchased.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So this is after they've purchased. We've already agreed to what's inside the box, what we're going to do. And this workshop comes through the consultant, and we do each module that way. Right, so we'll do accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash management, general ledger, and then we'll do sales orders, purchasing, and inventory. Those are the key ones, right? And we do that. But
during that workshop, it sounds like a pre-configured Acumatica is on the screen already.
And it is,
right?
And yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So so when they purchase, just in general, most of these are all SaaS customers. So our SaaS team, will pre-configure, we'll actually set up the system, and we let them know, hey, this is a fast track. And basically what fast track is we take a snapshot. We have snapshots that we maintain on our own as a services team, and then we will send them to the SaaS team, and then they upload that snapshot for us, and it's pre-set up at that point in time before we even have the first meeting with the customer.
Very interesting.
And as a side note, and all these materials for fast track are actually on portal where partners they don't need Acumatica to do this. We've put out statements of work, we've put out project plans, we've put out these snapshots, all this stuff, kickoff decks, everything. They're packaged and they're on portal for partners to download and use. And we've seen a lot of partners be very successful with those and sort of tailor them to their consultants, to their customers, and do different things of that sort. So I know I went off to a little bit of a tangent there, but so we'll have these workshops, and like I said, we'll go through each module, normally one at a time, just because of the customer pace and their availability, right? From that, now we have this parking lot of phase 2 possible tasks that they may want to do. We just we keep them in a list. We use Smartsheet as our project management tool when Acumatica is involved. And we have this 3W that we keep track of, and we just, we tag phase, the sustained phase, so like phase 2, phase 3, or whatever. And we'll talk about them as we get towards the end of the project.
One sec, real quick, back on the workshop. So Acumatica is on the screen. Is there demo data in that snapshot? Yes or no? And then also during the workshop, are you actually entering transactions or are you just touring the system?
Great questions. There's basic data like your chart of accounts, sub accounts for like the general ledger side, but there aren't journal transactions in there, right? Like when we get
So
to
master data only.
master data, that's exactly right.
And is
Except
there
for,
like
hold on, I
some
want to be
sample
careful.
items?
I want to be careful when I say master data. So it's not all master data. It's what's required to have the screens set up, right? The preference screens. There are some like, which normally it is sort of master data, but it's not, like our customer classes. We provide a couple customer classes, but we don't have customer data in there yet. So we don't have like customers.
Okay. No items, no vendors.
We don't have items. We don't
either.
have vendors yet, right? We're not to that point.
But maybe during the workshop, are you going to enter a customer as part of?
We are not. We are not.
Okay.
All the workshop is really more of a walking through Acumatica, showing what's been pre-configured, right? So the setup screens. So going back to the general ledger, accounts, sub accounts. If there's and then sort of that preference screen that is generally sort of what's set up inside Acumatica for the general ledger piece. On the accounts receivable is basically sort of some terms, and we'll have a couple checking accounts. I know that's cash, but you can sort of see what those payment terms in cash are and what the customer classes. And we just sort of go through the screens and we just sort of talk through them. A little bit like a demo, but we're not actually demoing anything. So, but it's really the goal behind it is for us to learn more about if we're involved, right? Because a lot of times we're not involved in the sales cycle. So it has a multi-purpose for us. If the partners ask us to do it, then we will, it allows us to learn a little bit more about the customer, but it also allows us to set the stage for what's going to happen in phase 2, but it also helps us set those expectations of what we just talked about in the kickoff the week before, right? So the goal is to keep that mindset of this is a box, we need to stay in the box, but we're not saying no to these other things. It's going to happen in another 2 months or something of that sort, right?
Gotcha.
So there's absolutely no data entry. It's just really walking through the screens, and it's almost another point of keeping the customer excited that, hey, look, here's some things we're not going to do right away. You're not going to have your foundation, but we'll be able to do later, right? And keeping that momentum going, right? That positive momentum going. Once we've done that workshop, and a lot of it is more for the consultant, but just as much for the customer, then we task them with, and this gets back into a little bit the last time when we were talking about the data migration tool, where is their data stored? Right. And so we will have at that point in time given them, if they're in Excel, or they have to dump all their data into Excel, we'll have given them templates so that they can actually extract the data. If it's coming from a system like GP or Sage, then we have direct connects and we'll use the data migration tool and actually pull it in through this FastTrack program. If it's something else, then obviously they have to export the data. So during that second week, they are focused on exporting the data from their current ERP system. And we also sort of task them with going through some of the user-based training that's on Open University, right? And we share with them some of the job aids and those different aspects that we find are successful and allows the customer to have a better understanding of what's going on. Once they get us that data, then we'll import it for them. And that normally, so let's say it takes them about a week to do it, then it'll take us, let's just say roughly about a week to import that data in. Once we've got that data in, then that following week, so I think we're roughly at week 4-ish, right? Somewhere right around there, week 4, week 5. And then we come back around and we'll do a transactional training. And that's then when we actually go through and they have all their data in there, right? And so we sort of reiterate and we say, hey, great, here's how you enter in a customer. Here's how you enter in an AR invoice, or since we're using distribution, here's how you enter in a sales order, and it processes all the way through. So we'll do that order to cash training for them so that then they can go through and they can do it and they can see how that's working. Once we've done that transactional training, they go into UAT. And right out of training, they're into UAT. And then once they've
user acceptance testing.
That is exactly right. Yep, user acceptance testing. So once they've gone through that, then if they sign off, a lot of times it happens pretty quickly because we know it's going to work because they agreed to the box, right? Now, if we have had some scenarios where all of a sudden, hey, I need this now, right? I didn't think about this. I really need this. Can we delay the project a week, or what's the cost? And then we work out some of those things. But we try to stay as much as we can in that box to get that foundation and get that go live when we originally agreed to. Once they sign off on UAT, then we're into prepping for go live, and then they're live. And it's at the end of the day, I know I made it sound very simple, and generally speaking, it is that simple. In most cases, again, it ends up being customers say, hey, we really want to move fast, but when it comes down to it, they've got their day job, as we all know, and through the 18 plus years I've been doing implementations, and I even tell customers this all the time, one of the first questions I always ask them is, great, how much time are you able to dedicate to this project? Generally speaking,
that's huge. That's a huge question right there.
And so they ask you this. So you've been a consultant, you still are. What do you normally hear from a customer? I mean, when you ask that question, what is the customer's normal first response?
Yeah, I don't feel like I've seen enough volume to know what normal is. Okay. I don't know. I think for me, it's more, it's not so much on what they can do. It's more setting an expectation of what I want them to do, and not giving them like a number of hours a week, because that's too vague, but giving them a days and times. I want you Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 12, whatever it is, blocked out, and someone babysitting you to make sure you're focused on this, something like that.
No, fair enough. And that does work too. And I've done that. I do like asking a question a lot of times because I want the interaction versus me talking all the time, right? I try to find ways to ask questions. So part of that is more for me on the mindset of how much time do they think this is going to take of them, and how much time they think they might actually have available. And so I've seen that, we'll get people that will say, okay, well, I'm going to dedicate 75% of my time, or I'll dedicate.
Really? Wow.
Sometimes
That's pretty ambitious.
It is, but what's funny about that is that, normally I'll get somewhere between 50 and 75% of my time, right? And then sometimes you'll get people that'll say less, right? It just depends on everybody's role. So, those that give me those high numbers, I was like, well, explain to me, how are you, what do you do today, and what are you giving up to give me 75% of your time, right? Just to really get in their mindset and start sort of getting them to think about it. And then, generally speaking, my experience is, if somebody's, and I'll just use 50% because it's easier math. If somebody says 50% of the time, I know the max I'm going to get out of that person is probably 25% of the time. Just what the reality is. People starting in the beginning think that they're going to provide a lot more, and when the reality comes in, it actually ends up being 50% of what they think that they're going to be able to provide to the project. Now,
still a good chunk of time. I mean, a quarter of your work week still doing your existing job. That's still a lot of time.
No, it is. I mean, but again, part of that, and a lot of times when I do that is when there's, especially in those kickoffs, the executive team or whoever the executive sponsor is, or like the CFO tends to always be in those particular calls, right? So then a lot of it goes, okay, somebody's saying that they're going to spend 10 hours a week on this particular project. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to need to provide 10 hours a week, but are you going to authorize this person to spend 10 hours a week, right? So it almost becomes more of that. This is what the person's thinking. Now, is their direct report actually going to give them that leeway to give them that hours? Or, a lot of times, sometimes I've heard, okay, well, we're going to help our employees, and they just know that they're going to spend an extra 10 hours a week, but we're going to compensate them for that. And so I've found those type of things that do happen. But then that also then allows me to go back into some dates, because we've already talked about go live dates, right? Generally speaking, because at the sales cycle, people are, before they close, I want to go live at this point in time. Then I can come back, since we're doing this in the kickoff a lot of times, then I can go back and say, okay, great. Well, based upon what you all are saying, now this isn't the time that we need to spend is about the same, but we're not going to be able to meet these dates because of that, right? So can we get more time? Or great, this is perfect. If you can give me this time, we can meet these dates. So part of the reason behind that is understanding, especially in this fast track and this phased approach, this is really the customer has to own it and drive it. And that's not just in this fast track. This should be all a thought process just for all implementations, right? Implementations are successful. And the ones that I see that are very successful is when the customer actually takes ownership, right? They say, hey, this is my implementation. I just need you here to help guide us and make sure we're doing the right things. It doesn't mean we're not doing a lot of work. And as a business consultant and helping them, which we should be doing quite a bit. But when they want to take that ownership and truly take that ownership, right? Those are the ones that go very smoothly and go well. It doesn't mean that they always stay on time and within budget, but they're much smoother project at the end of the day. And they tend to be a lot more on schedule and stay within budget. The ones when they don't take that ownership, we're almost pulling them through. And that gives me a little bit of that idea that, hey, there's a good chance that we're gonna miss some of these dates at the end of the day. So it allows me to set expectations early, again, because that's just what's critical through no matter what methodology or tools that you use. Setting the expectations through these implementations is just critical. Now, the nice thing about FastTrack is because it's a smaller window and it's a more defined scope, you're able to, it's a shorter time frame, right? And you're able to actually have a quicker win. But it's still, the reason why I bring all this together is that there's nothing unique about FastTrack and this phased approach. Is just outside of just being pre-configured and trying to truncate a little bit of some of the work, because we're not having to really do that full design, or we're putting a little bit more on the customer to do some of that training. And we've already pre-configured a system and we've tested it. So we know the UAT should go smoothly. And it's continuously going down through that process.
You mentioned earlier the importance of a strong project manager in general, and you don't have to be boxed in your response, but in general, do you feel like it's that strong project manager needs to be on the customer side or on the consultant side?
Ideally both, but at a minimum, it has to be on the partner side. We still today, and I'm starting to see a little bit of a swing, but we still don't value on either side the importance of project management. Now, I've seen an increase in that thought process through the years. Again, at Summit, a lot of times I'll ask those questions because it is critical. I know when I get pulled into projects, right, or customers are calling us about a project, or partners are calling us about a project, generally speaking, it all has to come back to communication, expectation setting, which is basically the role of the project manager. But yes, if I had my druthers, I'd love to see two strong project managers, one on the customer side, who can really sort of drive the customer, has that authorization, is very open and honest with the executive team of what's going on, what do we need, and going down that path. But at a minimum, if you can have a good, strong project manager from the partner side, you can get away with somebody, not a really strong project manager on the customer side.
What about customizations? You've used the word box multiple times, excuse me, which I really like. We're not encouraging outside the box thinking here. We're encouraging inside the box thinking. Are customizations even allowed in the box here to do one of these?
No. Customizations skew and we've tried some different things. That's been the neat thing. When we first created this, that was one of the things, working with our partners, and I want to emphasize that, we've, that partner group, there was 10 other partners that helped build this out and what that box should look like. So it wasn't just something Acumatica just said, hey, here's this box, right? We had a lot of feedback from the partner community. And they all agreed. And then one of the things, and then we're like, great, how do we test this? How do we roll this out? And we weren't getting a whole lot of partners say, oh, I'll do it. So I basically said, hey, would you all be okay if Acumatica did it? And either one, partners can bring us customers and we'll do it for you just to test it out, and we'll make sure those successful, right? If we end up having to spend 1,000 hours and whatever the case may be, we're going to stay in the box, we'll keep the customer happy, but we'll do the beta testing just to really see, is this box the right box? Do we need to expand it? And really, what does that look like? And the partners are like, great, go ahead. You guys can beta test it. If we've got some customers we think it's a good fit, we'll let you know. But we as Acumatica, we also went back and looked at a lot of disqualified partner or customers, right? Just primarily because of the services cost, right? That Acumatica was a great fit, but they weren't ready to spend this $70,000 on an implementation, right? So we went back and looked through some of those and found some customers and had a lot of success. We learned a lot of things early on, about our statements of work, and we had to be a lot more detailed. And as I talked about, setting the expectations early on and constantly throughout the project. But yeah, it was, it's been a neat project that's allowed us to really help our partners to be a lot more efficient and to provide a solution to those customers who just aren't ready to spend the $60,000 or $70,000, but allow them to get to a true ERP system, and that will grow with them as they move along. Now, a little bit of the mindset is trying to get partners, as we are doing the same thing. We continuously try to reduce our services costs to our partners. The model behind all this is that we have to change the mindset that partners are building their business off of services, that it should be building it off of number of customers and that SaaS license. And FastTrack sort of helps going down that path, because then you get the extra services and you build up those reputations, and it becomes more of a relationship that you all grow together through the lifetime versus, hey, we're going to go through this turbulent over 12 months and then we're just never going to talk to each other again afterwards, right?
Yeah, after a big bang, no one wants to talk anymore. Too exhausted.
Exactly. Don't call me for another 2 or 3 years. I'll call you.
Quick time check. We're 1 minute to the top of the hour. Do you have another 5 to 10 minutes, or do you have a hard stop?
No, I blocked out a few extra minutes.
So, I'm curious that at the end of this thing, we get live, we got up faster than we normally would. What, I could see how we could also have sort of a big bang effect here where we just sort of stop. How do we then feed into a more, I forget what phase you described it, but more of this kind of continuous improvement mindset for years to come, even indefinitely, where you're constantly improving the workflow in your business? How do you then transition from FastTrack to what's next? Yeah,
so it is we call it our sustained phase, but it is a continuous improvement. And it allows us, because we did that workshop early on, and remember, we did all that parking lot stuff, right? We had all these other tasks that were parking lot, and even through the project, we're hearing some of these. You sort of almost have to really listen really well to what the customer is saying, and you just continuously add them to this 3W that we have, and then we allow customers to add to it. And then all of a sudden, okay, great, we're live. We get some feedback. How are things going? We let them get their first month end close, all those different things, right? We don't want to start too quickly. It just depends on the customer's pace, right? We've learned a lot about the customer over the last 2 to 3 months. And now we know sort of what they can take on, what they can do themselves, what we need to continue to help them with, and then really how fast do they want to move into those other phases. Sometimes it early on there in the sales cycle, and they're sort of already built into that original statement of work. Sometimes we don't find out about it until we get into the actual project in itself. It just depends on how that sales cycle went. And then it's great. Remember these parking lot items? Yeah. So what do you guys think? When would you like to get started on them? Do you have a priority on them? So because of all that, that just naturally forces you to have that conversation, right? And then And then hopefully, if all goes well, it ends up turning around and say, great, what do you all feel comfortable handling? Or what do you need us to do? Whether it be Acumatica or even the partner. Because when a customer feels empowered, right? When they feel that, and hopefully we're all doing this, we're teaching the customer to be self-sufficient, right? When we can teach them to do that and they feel that empowerment, they're actually a lot more apt to say, what, we're just too busy. Yeah, we could do it, but we'd love for you to do it. We had a great working relationship. Why don't you just please go ahead and do it for us? And those are the things that I see a lot of positive out of when we've done these phased approaches, because we met our original expectations that we had set, right? We were going to keep it at this cost because we do this as a fixed fee. And we met the timeline. Now, we might have missed it by a week just because, and we can call that out, but it's been such a short period of time. They're seeing that time to value, and they're being very productive, much sooner than probably what they were originally thinking. So moving in that sustained phase just naturally happens. So there's not a whole lot of work that you have to do.
And because you've been end to end through a deployment, the next phase, whatever that is, whatever that thing in the parking lot you're going to implement, you're just in a sense following the same process, right? Now you've been through it, and now same idea. You're going to bite off something that's manageable, it's smaller, and you're going to get through it. And you're going to do these faster iterations rather than trying to bite off too much. You've already done that. Now you just need to keep in the box. You just need to draw a new box, keep the box small, and just keep doing that, right? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's exactly the right idea. As you stated, keep it in the box, but it's fast wins. We're into this, going back to sort of what you and I talked about a little bit earlier. We're into this age where everybody is expecting everything instantaneously. So the smaller the boxes that we can make, that makes sense, right? It doesn't mean let's make something so small it's not really a win. You got to look at everything, but let's bite off one thing as we can. And then see where it goes, right? A lot of businesses are very agile and expanding and doing different things. And sometimes, let's take one thing, great. Hey, you know what? We're not ready. Give us a month, and now we'll move on to the next thing. Versus having this, medium-sized project take longer because all of a sudden they had something come up, right? So it allows the consultants and allows us to be a lot more agile based upon the customer's requirements.
And I can see how on the consulting side, you mentioned that you're not as focused maybe here in the deployment on building a services business, at least not building a big bang services business. But I could see how when you do more of these fast track, you have a greater level of trust with your clients. And you also mentioned, the client, maybe that next phase, they're more self-sufficient now, but maybe they just don't have the time to do it. I could see how on the back end, you're going to get more services flowing back to you just because there's a greater level of trust. You actually delivered something, you were within budget, and you might get more services over the long run as a consultant just because that relationship is stronger.
Oh, and definitely. And and you hope this never happens, but we all know, right? We're human. We have our good days, we have our bad days. Sometimes we make a mistake, right? But let's say that, when the fast track goes well and all of a sudden, you get into maybe this third project with them and there's a hiccup, right? It's a lot easier. They're more apt to forgive you because you've had two or three successful things and we had a sidestep here. If you had that sidestep in this more big bang theory, that sidestep and that issue carries with you past go live, and it's almost impossible to recover from at the end of the day. So, I hate to talk about things when things don't necessarily go right, but it's a reality, and those things do occur. But you are right. You're building that trust, just like we have friends, right? And you build that trust, and things are going well, and all of a sudden a friend just does something wrong to you, right? If you've been friends for a long time, depending on what they did, but generally speaking, the longer you've been friends, the more you're apt to forgive and forget and then just move on, right?
Makes sense. I've definitely seen that, in implementations. Yeah, you're right. You make that mistake when you haven't delivered anything yet, and it's a lot harder to recover from that. Kind of goes back to the momentum point.
Yep.
Well, this has been great. When I first saw FastTrack, the name, my skeptical nature, was like, this is just a marketing thing. Every ERP software company wants it to be faster, right? So you're just telling prospects what they want to hear. But Todd, you're not the sales and marketing guy. You're a get real guy, and it's been great talking through some of the details with you.
No, I appreciate it, Tim. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of success. We actually do, and if partners are listening, I want to encourage you to do this. But we internally, when we're involved in projects, we have a little bit, we do a go live announcement, and we share the win. It's great when you close that deal, but there's just even more excitement when you've had a successful and when the customer's live, right? And we go out of our way to, promote the partner, to promote the customer, the consultants that are on there. So it's a great promotional piece for the partners when they've closed the deal, but when they've had these implementations go live. And when we send out those go live announcements internally, it's amazing the emails that we get from everybody, because it goes to absolutely everyone. Over 500 and some odd employees inside Acumatica. We get comments from, oh, hey, that was really cool. That's a neat business, or that's cool that how that worked, and yeah, that's amazing you were able to get that in. And I mean, we had one implementation go live in 19 days. And it's those kind of things that excite everybody. So for partners, not even if it's FastTrack, reach out to your PAM or your customer success. We've got a template out there. Share us your implementation wins when they've gone live. The template is easy to fill out. It takes less than 30 minutes, and we love to share that information internally because it does excite us all when we get to hear about those go lives.
Yeah, and the faster you get through an implementation, the more energy you have left to actually celebrate the win. Sometimes you're too exhausted after a big bang to want to celebrate, right?
Oh yeah, you're like, oh, this was 18 months. Wow. I mean, it was fun, it was successful, but I'm so tired. I'm glad to not have to talk about this particular project anymore.
That even reminds me, like celebrating internally at the customer. I remember one that we actually worked on together years ago. They threw a little like Acumatica party. This was for themselves, the customer, just to get people like excited about the new system. And they even made like little Acumatica cookies. And I thought that was a really cool way just to sort of this back on the sentiment side of things, just to feel good about the new system and start off on the right foot and feel positive about it.
Yeah, no, and that is one thing and actually I talked about that. I did a customer breakout session at the last summit, and I spent actually a lot of time talking about the sustain phase, like once you've gone live, right? But that was one of the things. One, just gathering the feedback, but pause. If it's a 19-day implementation or it's an 18-month implementation, take the time and celebrate, right? Acknowledge the win. We're in this mindset that everybody's okay to comment about things that have gone wrong, but we have a hard time complimenting others or just celebrating the wins in some of our business events, and I don't think it gets done enough. So I think the more that you can do it, it's amazing the dividends that it just pays over and over and over again.
That's great advice. Any final FastTrack thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I think it is a proven program. It does work well. It does require a very strong project manager, and it does require the customer to be invested, but it can be done. It can be done at a very low fixed cost, and it is a way to get a customer time to value and being productive faster than any other way. And then it just helps build that relationship to work through a long sustained phase that allows the customers constantly seeing the benefits of why they chose Acumatica and the positive aspects of that.
I don't want to get you in trouble, so if you can't come up with anything, no problem. But do you have any like vague numbers in terms of like, is this less than 50% of new implementations, greater than 50%? Do you have any vague idea of how many new customers are actually doing this?
I would say that, I mean, so here's, I don't really have numbers, you're not going to get me in trouble, but I don't have good numbers to share, and only in the aspect of, we probably do Acumatica, right? We have partners that reach out to us and ask us to do it just because of resource constraints, and they're just not as comfortable doing it in a fast pace than a standard implementation. I would say we probably do on average, we get the request maybe one or two a month, and going down that path. Now, I do know there are several partners out there, I'm going to say more of a handful, but not a lot of them, that have taken the materials and, as I stated a little bit earlier, tweaked them and use them, because they'll send us emails every now and then, hey, we don't have the latest build, or how can we update this and go down that path, or can you change the base currency to Canada or something of that sort. So we do know that they're using them. Now, to what that number is, I don't know, but I do know that there's a newer partner I won't name, but that's all they're focusing on, are construction fast tracks, and they're basically closing almost 2 or 3 deals a month, just because of the lower cost and the time to get the customer up and running, and then they'll just move into the sustain phase. And so they're finding a lot of customers there that are willing to go down that path. And so it's, I stated this earlier, and I have said that numerous times, but I think, again, not everybody's bought in or sees the benefits. And I think a lot of it, unfortunately, is that, we're still in the mindset that our businesses are services based, not customer or software license based, right? I think as partners start to understand that more, they'll see a lot more of the benefits of this, and probably have a lot more success, and we'll see a lot more people coming around it. We're adding more, we're expanding the box more, and trying to go down that path. But this should be something that partners are almost leading with, right, in a lot of aspects. Hey, we have a couple of different aspects, and we can do something very quick and inexpensive, or we can do more of a standard. I see a lot more, unfortunately, this comes up at the tail end of the deal when the customer pushes back on the services number, right?
Yeah, good point. But lead with that initially in the sales cycle. Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
I think as partners start to change a little bit of their mindset, it's something that they've got to try to do, and it's not, doesn't work for all customers, so it's not going to work for all partners either. But I think all the ones that we've done, we have a high success rate, and it's been good, and we're going to continue to enhance it and build onto it, and provide the tools to our partners so that they can use it and continue to be successful and grow their business.
It feels like, would you say it feels like we're still kind of early on in the adoption of this? And this is really a pitch to the partners, of course, because they're the ones doing the implementations, but that we're still kind of in the beginning of the real uptake on adopting this type of mindset.
I think the partners are, yes. I think they're still in their early stages of buying in, as a whole. There's definitely several that have grabbed onto this and are running with it and having great success. And then the sustain phase, and then adding on features later, and continuously building that lifelong relationship with that customer. So I think you are correct. It's the partners have not fully adopted it, and I think part of it, and a little bit, I guess maybe on my own failure a little bit, is just not providing the knowledge and providing more webinars about what it is and how to make it work, and go down that path. So a little bit of my goal over the next 12 months or so is to try to figure out, how do I continue to inform our partners of how this works, and who are good fits, and going down that path. So as partners, be prepared to see some more things come out about this, and definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask questions, because it is a differentiator, and it does help have a higher customer satisfaction, and build a lifelong relationship with our customers.
And you mentioned earlier there's a link on the portal. Is there like one landing page for all this FastTrack stuff?
There is. I mean, if you go to sso.acumatica.com, right, and then I can send you the link.
I'll get it from you. Drop it on this episode page. It'll be augforums.com/episode 88, and I'll get that link from you.
Okay. Yeah, but yeah. So if you just go to.
But yeah, there's meat to this. It's not all talk, right? And mindset. There's like tools. There's a lot of depth to the tools that you guys have built around this. It's not just a slideshow, right? That you got.
Oh no, it's definitely not. Even though we didn't do a slideshow, right? Which I could have done, but I've got multiple versions of one. There are snapshots out there that partners that we put out almost every 2 weeks, because we stay with the even builds, just so everybody knows. But like, there's SOWs. There's a zip package for like a financial or distribution or construction. And within that zip package, there's a kickoff deck, there's a project plan, there's the statement of work, there is meat and materials there for the partners to use, and be successful with this. So we want partners to use the tools. I'd love partners to give me feedback. I don't get that as much as I would hope, but I'm okay with that. Just to know that people are using it and seeing partners be successful is somewhat gratifying, but I'd like to see more take advantage of it.
Well, thanks for coming on to talk about FastTrack, and I hope you see a uptick in adoption as time goes on.
Well, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time and allowing me to share a little bit more of information about FastTrack.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of augforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.